Welcome back to the Military Situation Room channel. I hope you are all doing well today. As always, our focus is on providing clear, neutral, and fact-based analysis of the most important geopolitical and military developments unfolding across the region. In the past several hours, several unexpected updates have surfaced, and together they paint a picture of a rapidly shifting situation. Some of these changes are subtle, others more visible, but each one carries implications that extend beyond the immediate moment. In this report, we will go through the latest political decisions, diplomatic signals, escalation incidents, and frontline movements, building a comprehensive understanding of how the situation is evolving and what it may mean in the coming days. One of the most significant developments comes from Belarus, where leadership issued a carefully worded statement that has drawn global attention. The message highlighted the need for sovereign strategic reassessment and emphasized Belarusian independence in determining its security direction. This phrase alone surprised many analysts because Belarus has historically aligned very closely with Moscow in both rhetoric and policy. The tone of the new statement, however, suggests a carefully calculated effort to create space between current decisions and previous commitments. It did not break with Russia outright, but it noticeably avoided reaffirming full alignment. International media reacted quickly. Several European analysis programs described the announcement as a controlled strategic distancing, while regional think tanks categorized it as the most significant messaging shift from Minsk in years. Commentators noted that this recalibration comes after a sequence of closed-door meetings inside Belarus that were not covered by state television. That absence of coverage has heightened speculation that internal pressures or disputes may be building within the Belarusian leadership circle. Moscow responded with a brief, cautious statement emphasizing that relations remain steady and cooperative. Yet, the tone was noticeably softer than previous reactions to similar moves. Analysts pointed out that Russia's restrained response may indicate a desire to avoid amplifying the situation. Instead of directly challenging the Belarusian statement, Moscow framed it as a routine national clarification, downplaying its significance. But the absence of strong affirmation also suggests awareness that Minsk may be undergoing political pressures that the Kremlin prefers not to escalate at this point. Diplomatically, this development introduces new uncertainties. If Belarus is positioning itself for more strategic autonomy, even partially, it could impact several areas of regional coordination. Intelligence sharing, logistics flows, and joint defense planning could all be affected, even if only gradually. Some experts believe that Belarus may be attempting to quietly balance its alignment, opening limited diplomatic channels with Western or neutral actors as a means of hedging against long-term geopolitical shifts. Others suggest that this is a tactical maneuver intended to extract better terms or guarantees from Moscow. In terms of negotiations, the move could also reshape future diplomatic frameworks. In theory, Belarus could attempt to present itself as a more neutral mediator if tensions continue to rise. However, this scenario remains speculative because Belarus is still deeply integrated into regional structures that limit how far it can move without triggering pushback. Nevertheless, the fact that such discussions are being considered by analysts shows how unexpected the statement was. Parallel to these political maneuvers, several escalation events unfolded across multiple sectors. Overnight, multiple waves of drone attacks targeted logistical facilities. Defense officials reported that the attack pattern appeared designed to create saturation, overwhelming intercept systems by leveraging volume rather than precision. The majority of drones were shot down, but a handful reached their targets, striking minor substations and supply points. While the damage was not severe, the operation demonstrated continued attempts to probe defensive readiness. Missile activity also increased. Residents in several regions reported hearing multiple detonations, and emergency units were deployed quickly to affected sites. Early evaluations suggest that command nodes and communications infrastructure were targeted, consistent with efforts to disrupt operational coordination. Though information remains incomplete, initial patterns indicate that these strikes were part of a coordinated effort rather than isolated or symbolic gestures. Maritime tensions also rose after reports emerged of unusual maneuvering between surveillance vessels near a contested water boundary. The ships did not engage directly, but their proximity and movement patterns suggested elevated readiness on both sides. Naval analysts often interpret this type of behavior as a form of signaling, an attempt to demonstrate presence, resolve, or deterrence without initiating open confrontation. Given the political uncertainty involving Belarus, these signals may carry additional weight in shaping expectations among regional actors. Turning to the front line, we begin in the northern direction, where movements remain slow but strategically significant. Forces conducted probing attacks, attempting to identify weak points in defensive lines. These operations achieved small advances, typically a few hundred meters, before encountering entrenched positions. The terrain in this area, defined by thick forests and limited visibility, restricts maneuverability and forces operations into narrow corridors. This environment favors defenders who can use natural cover and familiar terrain to channel incoming troops into predictable paths. Because of this, even small gains require considerable effort and often do not immediately translate into wider breakthroughs. Further west, another sector experienced sustained pressure as attacking forces sought to exploit a perceived gap between two defensive units. This attempt created tension across a defensive line that had been stable for weeks. While attackers did not achieve a deep penetration, defending forces made calculated adjustments, pulling back slightly to establish a tighter and more flexible configuration. The resulting withdrawal was small but important, as it changes angles of engagement and creates a new geometry for future operations. These tactical withdrawals often appear minor on maps, but they influence how quickly reinforcements can move and how effectively forces can coordinate fire support. In the central zone, the situation remained relatively balanced but dynamic. A fortified position on elevated ground was abandoned after sustained artillery strikes, leading to a controlled defensive relocation a short distance behind the previous line. Elevated terrain has significant tactical value because it provides observational reach and helps direct fire more accurately. Losing such a position reduces situational awareness, but the new fallback line is reportedly better supplied and reinforced. Analysts consider this sector to be transitioning into a more stable defensive posture, with neither side seeking immediate breakthrough attempts. The eastern direction, however, saw the most intense confrontations. Mechanized units launched several coordinated assaults supported by drone surveillance and intermittent airstrikes. These pushes resulted in territory gains ranging from several hundred meters to just over a kilometer in a few localized pockets. The movements indicate a willingness to invest resources in this axis, suggesting that this segment of the front line may be prioritized for future operations. Satellite imagery revealed increased vehicle clustering and logistical buildup in rear zones, indicating preparation for sustained operations. However, analysts caution that the risk of overextension remains high, as supply routes in this direction remain vulnerable to disruption and counterattacks. In the southeastern area, defending forces conducted a series of limited counterattacks aimed at recovering recently lost positions. Although the counter-operations did not retake major ground, they succeeded in halting the attackers' momentum and stabilizing several defensive nodes. This sector remains highly fragmented, with gains and losses occurring frequently as both sides employ small assault groups to secure tactical points, observation posts, and minor strongholds. Night operations dominate here, as the cover of darkness reduces detection and allows small units to move with greater confidence. Looking at the tactical map, several patterns emerge. In the northern sector, the line is slowly widening, with pressure distributed across multiple axes. This multi-directional pattern forces defenders to spread their resources more thinly, complicating rapid reinforcement. The western pullback has created a shallow salient, an outward bulge in the front line, that can be tactically vulnerable if not reinforced. Salients expose flanks and can become targets for pincer-style attacks if the opposing side identifies an opportunity. As a result, defending forces will likely prioritize stabilizing this new curve in the line. In the central zone, the front line has smoothed into a more cohesive arc after the withdrawal from the elevated position. While this reduces the defender's vantage point, it creates a more defensible line overall. Meanwhile, the eastern advances have narrowed a long-standing pocket previously used by defenders to stage raids. The shrinking of this pocket creates logistical challenges for the defending side, as supply routes are becoming increasingly difficult to maintain. Strategically, the broader military outlook is closely tied to the political shifts we examined earlier. If Belarus continues moving even slightly toward a more autonomous position, regional logistics and intelligence synchronization may undergo important adjustments. This could indirectly influence operational tempos across several frontline sectors, especially those closest to the northern border. Analysts note that such political adjustments often cascade into the battlefield weeks later, not immediately, meaning that present-day events may set the stage for future developments. For advancing forces in the east, the next logical goal would be the nearby ridgelines and elevated positions, which would enhance observation and strengthen control over surrounding terrain. Achieving this, however, requires sustained manpower and careful movement to avoid creating new vulnerabilities. On the defending side, reinforcing the western salient and preserving the integrity of supply lines in the southeast will be top priorities. Both sides are expected to continue using drone reconnaissance extensively, as it remains the most effective tool for monitoring enemy movement and detecting buildup before major operations begin. As we bring this analysis to a close, it becomes evident that today's developments reflect a larger pattern of political ambiguity mixed with tactical pressure. Belarus's unexpected shift in tone has introduced new uncertainty into the strategic landscape. Escalation incidents involving drones, missiles, and maritime maneuvers demonstrate that neither side is stepping back from active contestation. The battlefield itself remains fluid, with localized advances, withdrawals, and repositioning shaping the map in complex ways. What happens next will depend on whether political signals stabilize or evolve into clearer alignment shifts, and whether frontline actions escalate into larger operations or remain confined to tactical exchanges. The coming days will provide more clarity, especially as regional actors respond to Belarus's recent messaging and adjust their strategies accordingly. Thank you for watching. If you find these detailed analyses helpful, feel free to subscribe, like the video, and stay updated with upcoming reports.